Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, episode 139. Today on the podcast, Jen addresses the subject of introspection and the career-related benefits of journaling. What about the Netflix binge-watching drawbacks of journaling? I don't think I'm going to have any time for introspection until I'm all caught up on Game of Thrones.
Hey, this is Jen Swanson, and welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, the podcast that helps you to get the job, to love your work, and to advance your career. I've been doing all sorts of things this summer, and one of the things I haven't had time to do yet is to journal. But our next guest today is going to inspire that, I hope, in you, and has already inspired that in me, because I have a copy of her wonderful journal, and I am hoping that at the end of this month, I get the chance to sit in a cabin in the woods and do some journaling. So today I am bringing you Diana Mohrsen. She is a Canadian writer and workshop facilitator, and she developed and self-published a book called Introspect, a working journal. This journal is now in its third printing. It's been in different locations. It's been available in coffee shops and different places around the Lower Mainland. And now she's wanting to take it a little further afield. Diana has 2 grown daughters and 4 grandchildren who continue to inspire her. She loves to write, but besides that, she loves to explore the countryside in British Columbia, and she's very much into photography, and she photographs any wildlife that ventures within sights of the road. She's currently working on a book called Exploring Beauty that combines her love of writing with her love of photography, and I've had a chance to take a look at that, and I'm excited to see where that is going next. So without further ado, here is my guest Diana and our conversation about journaling. So this is my conversation with Diana Mohrsen, who is the author of Introspect, a working journal. Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast.
Hello.
I'm glad you could take time out of your schedule. Sounds like you do a lot of things. And I know you're busy with just finishing up writing your next publication. So thanks for being here today.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
I want to start by getting you to tell the audience a little bit about how you came to be a writer in the first place.
How I became a writer in the first place? Wow. I'd have to go way back to Prince Edward Island in early childhood and listening to the radio and hearing a storyteller on the radio that made me feel emotion, I guess. And I thought, that must be the most powerful thing in the world to do, is to be a writer. And I thought it was something that I would never be able to do because only really special people could be writers. And I was just a kid on Prince Edward Island. So I've always wanted to be a writer. And that's where it started, I suppose.
And when did you first write something that was published?
That wasn't until into my 30s when I had young children, and I started sending some things out for publication and was amazed that a couple of things were actually accepted.
Delight.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
That's great. So this journal, now you first published this a while back, didn't you?
It's copyrighted in 1998.
Okay,
yes, so a while ago now.
Quite a while ago, but this is the third version, you said?
That's right, the third printing, yes.
Right, so Introspect, a working journal. And so because we're talking to people who are job seekers or who are working on advancing their career, what kinds of benefit would working people, or anybody actually, have from the act of journaling?
Plato once said, "The life which is not examined is not worth living." Plato and many others have said that over the years, and I think it's really true. I tend to be naturally introspective, and so I tend to examine my life often. And I began wondering what happens to people who aren't introspective. And so I started thinking of it, what could I give as a guide to people to help them look at their lives? And that's how the journal started. I remember sitting out in my backyard with my kids running around and making notes for my book, which took quite a while in the process. So that's where it came from. So as far as the workplace, I think anywhere, working, non-working, you still have to know about who you are and where you want to go in life and more about the inner you. So I think journaling can help with all of those things.
And it can bring that out. I know you do writing workshops as well.
Yes.
And that you've done writing workshops using the journal. It's got so many great questions. I didn't have a chance to work through it.
Yes.
But I certainly took a look through it, and it's got some amazing questions. How did you decide on the sections, how you broke up the sections?
How I decided on the sections, I ended up with a whole pile of questions, and I think most of them were on cards. I thought it would be easier for someone to look at the journal if it was broken into sections. So I took my table and started with my cards and this pile. These are similar questions and these are similar questions. And so that's how I went about it. Yeah.
And so do you recommend that someone starts at the beginning of this journal, or are they able to bounce around and do a little bit here, a little bit there? Or?
Bounce around.
Bounce around.
Yeah, if you're somebody who likes to start at the first of a project and go all the way through, then you start at the front page. But no, there's nothing to prevent you from starting any place. As a matter of fact, I would encourage it. If you feel like journaling, you might just flip through it until a question at that particular moment in time appeals to you.
And then you start there. I noticed these sections for writing are quite small. And so what if you want to write 3 pages on a subject? Is there extra space in there to do that?
There's extra space just at the end of each section, actually. And you can always add more, but the pages are on acid-free paper, so it is meant that you can keep it, if you can fill out this journal and you could keep it forever and it won't deteriorate. So
right. So because I talk a lot and write a lot, and when I journal, I tend to write, some days 4 pages and then some days 2 sentences. And so I wondered if there was a strategy in the fact that that was a fairly small space to write in, or if you found that the people that have used it have found it just right.
I haven't heard anybody say they needed more space, particularly. It's something, if you tend to use a question like this, a guided question, as a jumping off place, and you tend to go for 4 pages, you might want to just work with a blank notebook alongside of the journal then, and just go with that. To it.
Yeah. I was looking at some of the questions. I thought, wow, that one question would take me a long time to answer. Like you could use this for years.
You could, or you could use it. I think it would be really interesting to use it when, say, you were 20, just coming into the job market, and taking a snapshot of your life at that time, and then say, number of years later when your kids are hitting their teens, that you do it again and compare, and see how things have changed.
Right. Do you have a favorite section or a favorite question?
Yes, I do. And this is simply because of doing it in a couple of workshops. I did some workshops with a transition house for young women with drug and alcohol abuse problems, and the counselors there really encourage them to journal. Most of them don't have much of a sense of how to go about that, and so they were using my journal because the questions are simple and it can be answered in depth, or it can be answered just with 1 or 2 lines, and even 1 or 2 lines helps. Anyway, one of the questions is just, I really wondered if I should even include it in there because it's so ordinary. Anyway, tell about a tree in your life.
That's the one I loved.
Anyway, I really struggled over should I leave that in or not, and I did finally leave it in. And I have had people read back what they've written, and I've been in tears because they've been so poignant anyway, that it really does matter. Now, I have a tree in my life. That's how I picked my questions. I thought, oh, okay, now what, maybe somebody else would have a tree in their life. I can think back to my childhood, and there are a couple of important trees. Anyway, this one young woman had moved a number of times, and at one school they were planting trees. And so this was a house where they actually stayed, and they planted a tree. And because she planted the tree, it was so important to her that, see, there I go again.
It's okay.
gets emotional.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my tree question is my favorite. Yeah.
I saw that and I thought, I love that question because I love trees. And also because it made me think of the homes that I lived in as a child. We moved around a lot, and which, I always tried to find a tree. So I thought of that and I thought, ooh, when I have time, I'm going to jump into that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so it's great. And I like the section headings that you've got as well. So for somebody who doesn't have this in front of them yet, they haven't ordered it from you yet, do you have any words of wisdom along the lines of journaling in general? For somebody who doesn't know how or who has never done it before.
I think maybe an easy starting point for anyone journaling is to ask themselves a question, I think, and just have a blank piece of paper. You could ask yourself any question under the sun. What do I want to do 5 years from now? And just start writing. And you might find that you go completely off topic, which is fine. I have a website, which I didn't give you the title of, but anyway, part of it is Pen and Paper Wisdom is part of the title. And I have found that through my own journaling that I find I'm saying things by the end of the journaling that actually sound amazingly wise. And that couldn't have come from me because I didn't know that before I started writing. So there's something about the fact of writing that can bring things out of you. Sometimes if you don't even want to do a question, if you're really blocked, and you can just start with something simple and say, I'm not going to write. I'm not going to write about what a bad day I had at work today. I'm not going to write about how terrible I feel right at this moment. I am not going to write about what a miserable day I had. I am not going to write because, and then suddenly you're off and running, and you do write about it, and it just takes a lot of pressure off of you, and you find out amazing things sometimes. Yeah, not always, but
it's almost like it opens doors that you don't know are closed.
Exactly. I would agree with that. Yes. Yeah.
And I like the idea of journaling because you can do it anywhere. You don't need Wi-Fi. You don't need a computer at all. You can any pen or paper, and you can be anywhere. Yes. And you can sit and journal.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So it's free and it's portable.
It is. Although I do have friends that journal on their computer.
Do you?
So, yes, I do.
Yeah.
I've never started to do that. I like using a pen and paper, but I have friends that keep journals on their computer. Yeah.
So I wonder, as far as, if you were doing a career change exploration and you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do next, I can see how journaling could be of benefit, because you might come up with something that you had never thought of before. Yes. As you were working through, like as you said, where do I want to be in 5 years?
Yes.
I wonder, for the person who is already working, could you do that for career goals? Like if you want to get to a particular position, or you want to, climb the corporate ladder or something.
Oh, I think so. I think just journaling about why you would want to do that, why you would like to make the career move, becoming clear in your mind what the benefits were for you. You'd also become clear on what you were willing to give up in order to do that. And you can start thinking about how you might change your path slightly to make those changes. Yes, absolutely. I think that would be of an advantage to people.
Right. I think it sounds like quite a powerful tool. And I wonder, you said there were people who hadn't journaled before. in some of the workshops. I
Yes.
mean, that's why you wrote this
Yes.
journal.
Yes.
And I'm surprised that there are so many people that have never done it. Are you surprised when you do the workshops?
I don't think my own grown children have ever journaled. They probably heard enough of it from their mother.
Right. Right.
No, I don't think I'm surprised that people haven't journaled. Those that do find great advantages in it. And I think some people are more naturally drawn to words than others are. I think I've known one woman at least that I'm sure that you could say that her scrapbooking book was really a journal in effect. You know, she did it with pictures and very few words, but it seemed to have the same outcome for her. Yeah, I just happen to be a word person. Yeah.
And the word introspect, the title of this journal, it is that. I think scrapbooking is that as well. I used to be a scrapbooker back when it was a big craze. And I remember, having a candle lit and having my glass of wine and sitting there in solitude and just looking at the pictures and deciding how to be creative. And it was very peaceful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that aspect of it too. It's just some moment of peace and thinking. We don't take time to think a lot.
No, most people don't feel they really have time, I don't think, these days. There's so much to do, And especially if you have a family and you're working, you're picking the kids up after school, you're taking them here and there, dinner's got to be ready, somebody forgot to buy milk, and, it's just frantic, so, yeah.
Yeah, so it's that few moments. So how long can you set a time every day? What do you recommend to people?
Oh, some people do. Some people set a time every day. I'm a random journaler.
I like that.
There's nothing that can inspire me more to journal than finding a new notebook in a bookstore or in a stationery store that has a cover that I like, and the lines are the right space and the margins are the right space, and suddenly I think, I need to buy that. And it's just a blank journal, and sometimes I'll only fill half of it. I've purchased journals of that type when I'm going on a holiday. I've purchased them pre-holiday. I've purchased journals because I'm making notes for a book and I want to just journal about the book. What do I dream for the book, and why am I writing the book? And so I have drawers full of partly used notebooks and journals, and there you go.
One of the things I liked about the introduction to this journal is the stories that you tell. And I know you're a storyteller, and I know that you teach life story workshops as well.
Yes.
And so the storytelling at the beginning was lovely to read.
Oh, thank you.
And I just wanted to read a couple of questions if I can. Which lesson was essential in making you who you are today? That's a big question.
Isn't it? Yes.
That's a really big question. And describe when you've seen a need and spontaneously helped. Wow.
Yeah.
Like when you've seen a need, it could be something really small.
Could be.
Or that could be,
Yeah.
How you launched your, whatever, your charity or.
Yes. Yeah.
Those are, yeah. So how long did it take you to get this collection of questions together?
Oh, I probably worked on it for about 2 years, which seems a long time because when you put all the questions down, I suppose there aren't that many, but it did take quite a while. The questions are all about experiences, and because they can be answered by anyone at any age. You could take a 9-year-old and ask them, when have you ever seen a need and helped fill it, Well, my grandson the other day held the door open at the mall for a lady that was just coming along, and she was surprised that a child had done that. And she stopped and thanked him, and he had a big grin on his face, and it was, He just did it.
Right.
And so that might be something a 9-year-old would answer to, or a 20-year-old might have a different experience. That's why you can do the same journal. You can look at it when you're 20, and you can look at it again when you're 40 and have an entirely different kaleidoscope of answers. So,
It's a little bit of your life story if you keep it, isn't it?
if you keep it, yes.
Yeah. That's great.
My mother worked part of it. My mother's no longer with us, but her journal is somewhere.
Oh, what a gift.
So yes, that is. Yeah.
To be able to read what she wrote. Huh. So I'm wondering if you have a last piece of advice for our listeners out there, if you've got something about journaling that you want to share.
I just think, especially since you're talking about the workplace in general, I think journaling is a wonderful way to decrease stress at the end of the day, to make some sort of break between the workday and the home life, or your after work life. Some people go to the gym. Many of us don't have time to do that. As I was saying earlier, there's daycare, there's picking up groceries, there's making meals. So you can open up the journal and just take a look at a question. When you're making dinner, you can just look at one of those questions that you've just asked and just keep the question in mind while you're doing other things. And then it just takes your mind off of the work and brings it to a different place. And you're sorting through, like, what have I done? When have I ever seen a need and done it? What would I choose? What would be the best one? And then if you get a moment later on, you can just jot down a couple of sentences to remind yourself of the story that you're thinking of. And it can help you too with if you're having any sort of difficulties with work. Instead of mulling it over, which our brains tend to do, like, why did he say that? Why did she say that? Replaying the whole thing, is just to take a journal for a minute and just let it go down on paper. What I've found about journaling also is that when it's on paper, your mind, for some reason, doesn't seem to have any need to go over it again.
Oh.
It's on paper. It doesn't need to remember it and remind you it's there. And it's very peaceful.
It's cathartic, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So you're it's almost like a therapy in a way. You're working things out, and you're putting it on paper so you don't have to replay it in your brain over and over and over again.
It's probably why therapists suggest people journal.
Sounds like everybody needs to journal.
I think so. A better world, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time today. If people would like to order a journal, where can they find you?
If someone sent me an email at D Mohrsen, and I'm going to spell that because it's really an unusual spelling. So it's D for my name, Diana, Mohrsen, MOHRSEN @gmail.com, and that's all lowercase.
All lowercase. So
Yes.
I will put that on the show notes at Communication Diva. And when you get your website, I know that it's not working right the way you want it right at the moment.
Of course, yes.
But I will put that on the show notes when it is. And people can drop you an email, and I'll put a picture of the journal and that on the website at communicationdiva.com. And this is episode 139. So thank you so much for coming in today, Diana, and best of luck. Oh, I wanted to ask you before we said goodbye, I wanted to ask you about your next project, because you've got a book coming out.
Yes, it's called Exploring Beauty.
Exploring Beauty.
Yes.
And I saw a little bit of the book, and it's got the most stunning pictures.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, yes. So I know that you're working on finding publisher at the moment.
I am.
And you've got the book written, but you're working on the next step.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But wow, does that ever look like an amazing book? And the topic is just, again, it goes hand in hand with journaling. If you're noticing things.
Another introspective piece.
Another introspective
Yes,
piece.
yeah.
So I look forward to that as well, and best wishes with the publication and the next phase of that journey.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that Diana has inspired you to get out a journal or to email her. Her email address will be over at communicationdiva.com/139. That will be her episode number, and you can find her email there and connect with her and order one of her absolutely beautiful journals that she's got called Introspect, a working journal. And I've got my copy, and I'm hoping at the end of this month to be sitting in a cabin in the woods on a Gulf island to be able to take some time to work through her journal, because it is absolutely a beautiful piece of work. And I encourage you to connect with Diana and order yourself one. I'm going to be heading off to Podcast Movement, which is a big conference that is happening in Anaheim, California, where a whole bunch of podcasters are getting together to talk podcasting, to learn more, to share what it is that we do with each other, and to be inspired by all sorts of amazing podcast producers that are out there. So that's what I will be doing in the next little while. I will have a show for you next week. There might be a week where we take a break. So if you notice that we're missing a week here, it is just because I've got lots going on in the next couple of weeks, and I would like to take a little bit of a vacation, a little bit of downtime. So we'll see. We'll see if I get you an episode out or not, but there might be an episode a week that no episode comes out. And if that is the case, just know that I am somewhere resting and relaxing and rejuvenating, ready to bring you some great content the following week. All right, until next time, please share this widely and spread the word about Communication Diva. I really, really appreciate you being here. This is Jen Swanson. Talk soon.